When I make YouTube videos, I often write down what I want to say. I feel like when I just turn on the camera and start talking without knowing what I'm going to say, it comes out as a bunch of incoherent nonsense. To help solve this problem, many people like using teleprompters. However, teleprompters are really expensive. That's why I recently built this teleprompter for super cheap. I used wood to enclose the camera and a tablet to reflect the words off a piece of acrylic. Let me show you how to build your own. For this project, I chose to use 1/2" MDF. The small 2 foot by 4 foot sheets have enough material to complete this build, but I opted to buy a full 4 foot by 8 foot sheet. I bought some clear acrylic for the reflecting glass. The first time I made the mistake of buying the non-glare acrylic, which will not work for this application, so I had to go back and buy the regular clear kind. I also wanted to try some acrylic see-through mirror, which is quite a bit more expensive. This was kind of a bummer because I actually didn't end up using it, and I'll explain why later. After unloading it from the truck, I used a circular saw to cut a piece 12 inches wide. I cut a second piece 7 1/4 inch wide. I cut two 14-inch pieces from the wider board. These will be the top and bottom of the teleprompter. Then I cut two more 14-inch pieces from the narrow board. These will be the left and right side of the teleprompter. I set my miter saw at a 45-degree angle and cut a triangle piece from the two sideboards. The acrylic reflector sheet will sit inside this slot. I glued and nailed the bottom piece to the two sides. This was a little tricky because I had already cut the 45-degree angle. If I were to do this over again, I would have glued these pieces into place first, and then use a jigsaw or something to cut the 45-degree angle. Making sure this dried at 90-degree angles was a little difficult. Here you can see me test fitting the acrylic sheet and the tablet. I used the closest heavy object I could find, which was my recycling bin, to weigh the assembly down while the glue dried. So the next step will be to figure out a way to mount the camera inside there and then figure out a way to mount this whole box on top of a tripod. And the last thing I'll want to do is paint the whole thing black so that no light reflects on the inside here. I used a ruler to find the center of the teleprompter. Then I measured in several inches and marked where I wanted to attach the teleprompter to the tripod. I used a Forstner bit to drill a hole the right size to fit a 1/4 inch, 20 thread per inch T-nut. After inserting the T-nut, I screwed in the quick release mount for my tripod. I inserted a clear piece of acrylic and tried out the teleprompter app on the tablet. You can see the words reflecting off this acrylic. Next, I cut the acrylic see-through mirror to the right size and noticed that it didn't really stay in place, which is something I expected, so I came up with a way to secure it. I drilled some holes through the acrylic and tightened some screws in the holes. Okay, so you can see that I have the T-nut in place, which allows me to mount the teleprompter on top of the tripod. The final step I need to do is to put in some sort of platform in here that the camera can rest on, and that will make sure that it's at the proper height going through the teleprompter. This step was relatively simple. I cut a piece to fit inside and glued and nailed it into place. I wanted to be able to adjust the camera backward and forward, so I figured I would cut a 1/4 inch slot into the camera platform. I drilled two holes and cut out the slot using a router. I'm still not super comfortable using the router, and to be honest, it scares me a little. Hopefully as I use it a little more, I'll gain more confidence. I made a round knob out of some 2x4 and ran a 1/4 inch bolt through it. The bolt threads into the bottom of the camera and holds it tight to the platform. This slot allows me to adjust the camera back and forth. I drilled, countersunk, and drove screws into the top piece to secure it to the rest of the teleprompter. One minor fix I made was to chamfer the edge of this little section of the top piece with the router to allow the acrylic reflector to slide in and out more easily. Finally, it was time for several coats of black paint. This helps reduce the reflections inside the teleprompter so that the camera won't see the acrylic. Okay, so I finished painting the teleprompter, and now it's time to show you how this thing works. The first thing I'm going to do is take the reflecting material and put it into the 45-degree slot. Now, as I showed you earlier, I purchased two different reflecting materials, the clear acrylic and the see-through mirror. When I bought the see-through mirror, I hoped that it would reflect the text a lot better, which it does that, but there's the downside, and that's that it brings the exposure down really dark, almost so dark that you can't even use it. So I think this would work if you were like outside under the sun and you had a whole lot of light. This would probably work. But in most situations, I'm probably just going to use the clear acrylic. So I'm going to slide this down into the 45-degree slot. I can tighten it into place using these screws. The next step is to install the camera. So I'm going to take the camera off the tripod here, and I'm going to put it right on side of the platform that I showed you earlier. If I put my hand in front of the camera, you can see it clearly, and you can't even tell that there's a piece of acrylic there. Now that I've got the camera mounted in the back, it's time to open up the Teleprompter app on the tablet and slide it into place. One of the key things to making a teleprompter work is having a dark background behind the camera so that no light reflects on the glass. In order to accomplish this, I'm just going to take a dark t-shirt and drape it over the back. If I zoom in here, you'll see that the words get reflected up on the glass and bounce directly out into the speaker's eyes. And there you have it. That's how to build your own teleprompter. One of the cool things about this design is that you can actually scale it down to fit a smartphone. The nice thing about this size is that it's a lot smaller and lighter weight. That's one of the things I don't like about the larger one, is that it's so heavy. I built it out of 1/2-inch MDF, and it's really big and bulky, and when I put it on my tripod, it's really unstable. So maybe if I found like a lighter material, it would solve that issue. So that wraps up this video. If you haven't seen my video on how to build a planter box, click here. If you're interested in seeing how I was contacted by Google's secret recruiting program, watch this video here. If you like these videos, the best way to show me that is by clicking this subscribe button in the middle. I'll see you next time.